welcome my esteemed panelists. We got Shweta here, who's from Meta slash Facebook, and she will bring in a lot of technology perspective. We've got Mr. Anand here, who's taken a company from idea to a listing stage. So you'll get to hear a lot about his perspectives, a lot about his experiences. And we got Mr. Mukesh Sinha. Again, he's running a company which is about to go SME IPO, and then after about a couple of years, main IPO. So you will hear a lot of perspectives from him as well. About me, I run a company which we started about 8 years back, and now is a unicorn. It's worth about $5 billion, and we've been invested by SoftBank, Tiger Global, etc. So I'll bring in my own perspectives as well. So I'll be moderating, and for about 10 minutes, we will have a few audience questions at the end. So yeah, I'll kickstart. So it's all about from concept to the unicorn stage. What are the problems that the founders face, and how do they tackle the problems, and what are the decisions that they need to face? And we'll talk about some controversial topics as well. What startups are doing wrong, what startups have actually done right, and how do they proceed and take it from there. So yeah, so thank you so much for being here. I hope more and more people come in as we go along. And so I'll start with Mr. Anand. So Mr. Anand, thank you so much for joining us. I'll start with the initial concept stage, right? When the company is actually very, very in its initial stage, when the founders are just thinking about an idea, they haven't really executed on the ground, when they're thinking about the team, when they're thinking about the funding, when they're thinking about finding the product market fit. How should a founder really think about it? Should they come up with the product market fit, then start thinking about funding an idea and funding and the team, or should they start thinking about that a lot earlier?
Thanks very much, Nitin, and good morning to everybody. So I think the first piece, every founder needs to really look at is fundamentals of the business. If you are a founder who's looking at building a long-term proposition, a solid proposition, which is there to stay. You're not just looking at valuations, you're looking at building a real business. And, I'm very, very clear that anything that is not a real business is not something that you should be getting into. We're seeing the negatives of what have happened in the market in the last couple of years, where people who built businesses purely for valuations are now also seeing them go right down. Instead of seeing them go up, they're seeing them go down. So, point number one, build a real business. Look at the fundamentals. The fundamentals are extremely important. Look at what it takes to ideate. How have you done your ideation? How have you gone through the various stages of what it needs to be able to get your business up and running? How have you done your product market fit? How have you put together a team, more importantly? Have you done the necessary homework to try and actually go out there and listen to people? You've got to listen to your customers. Your customers are your best critics. They are the ones who give you the best feedback, and they're the ones who can tell you what it takes for you to go out there and succeed. Your team, they are also a great sounding board, so you need to have the right expertise on board. I'm a strong proponent of always starting with bootstrapping an organization. When we started our own business, we were four founders, who went on to actually build a business which we listed on a stock exchange, but it took us many years to do it. It wasn't done in a hurry. It wasn't a 1 or a 2 or a 3 year process. Just to give you some figures, I was really looking at was, it takes 7 years on an average to take an organization to a unicorn status. That's number one. How many organizations actually become unicorns? It's 0.000006% of organizations that actually go on to become a unicorn. But what does it take to become a unicorn? It takes the right tech, it takes the right people, it takes money, and it takes patience. So patience is a very big virtue. At the end of the day, I think what you've got to really look at is it necessary to be a good organization, or is it necessary to be a unicorn? And I think that you will go on and understand over a period of time as you progress down this journey. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So what my main takeaway from what Mr. Anand said was have patience, right? So it's not as if you start an idea tomorrow and day after you'll become a unicorn or you aim to get listed in a week's time. It takes a lot of patience, and as he said, a typical time frame from a concept to a unicorn status is close to about 7 years, and so you need to have that particular patience. And yeah, so let me come to you, Mukesh. So Mukesh, how did you think about funding when you started up? So what was the first thought funding? Was the first thought team, or was the first thought I will go to the market and talk to my customers about my potential idea, my potential customers, and I will try and take feedback and try and build a team and funding around it? What was your initial sort of thought process when you started the company?
Yeah, so I have been associated with two companies. One, it is a Gravitas AI, which is a UK-based conversational AI company. And second, about the OSL Tech, which we are in the process of bringing the SME IPO. So I have experience of both the things. So when this OSL started, it is already almost close to 1 decade now. And we have fairly reached to a certain level, like it's 100 crore companies now. So it's the right time to go to SME, because there are different routes to raise the fund. Since we do understand the market, so we know that what is the potential of this product. Right now, we are just limited to India, but in OSL Tech, we are basically manufacturer of LED screen. So all this LED screen you are seeing around is being supplied by us. And second is about hearing aid. So we are coming to assisted healthcare kind of products there, because again, all these are technology-based kind of the product there. So for this, we are in the process of coming to IPO. The reason behind, there is no point to go at this stage to the VC, because they will negotiate quite hard. And we do understand the market, because we have tested the market. We have a product across the India, and now we are in the process of global expansion. So definitely SME IPO route, we are taking it there. But we are not going to just limit it to the SME IPO. After the SME IPO, which is coming, in fact, within couple of weeks, January, end of February, first week kind of thing there. Then from now to another 3 years, we'll be prepared for the main board IPO. So this is the route I am taking.
So my question specifically, Mukesh ji, is that how did you think about at the concept stage? I think we'll stick to that at the moment. So how did you think about the concept stage, about getting the right team, technology? So did you actually go to the customers to figure out what your product market fit would be like, or did you say that, I figured it out, now let me go and test it with my customers? What was at the initial stage?
So when we started this company, we know about these are the things coming at the global stage. That time India was not prepared, because all the screen was basically a static screen there. So we know that global market it is happening, so it's going to impact across the world, including the India. Then we have taken the early stage. We started with the few corporate companies, and then even government of India is now also started getting everything digital. So that pushed the market. So started with the global concept, how to test it in the Indian market, and now it is about.
So that makes sense. So you took a concept which was, or a macro trend which was working in the global markets, and you said that let me try and test it in the Indian markets. And actually, that's a very good point, right? So one. What you can do is that you can have a path-breaking technological idea which has not been there in the world. So that's one way of going about it, but the probability of that succeeding is extremely, extremely low. Second, what you can do is that you can look at a global comparable, which I think Mukesh has done with his company, and see that, listen, this is working everywhere else. How can I replicate that in Indian market and Indian condition, which is a totally different beast, and see how we can make it completely successful? So that's a second way of going about it. A third way of going about it is, listen, I'm going to find out existing dhanda or existing business. How can I find out a completely different space where I can operate? And this it's not a technological innovation. It's just finding out the right gap, and this is what we need to do. So it's not a complete new tech innovation. So coming to Shweta. So Shweta, what are in the initial stages? Again, we'll stick to the initial stages. Now, should the founder really think about the tech at the beginning, or figure out the business and the business plan, and then, you know, work with a few Excel sheets, etc., get it to a certain level, and then think about pumping in the tech? Should they think about initial tech, or should they maybe after 6 months, 1 year, should they be thinking about tech at that point of time? You know, from the meta perspective, you're the best person to answer that.
Thanks, Nitin. So, you know, very different from what Mukesh and Anish spoke about. My perspective will be a lot more about, as a tech platform, we see startups across the states. So we would look at a small and a medium business. We would look at really, really large companies. At a SMB kind of stage, if you are running an asset-light business, what I think really works is trying out a tech platform to test your product for fitment. Because if you're a B2C product, it's really important to make sure whether a small segment that you're going after, maybe it's a niche segment, think about you're a luxury travel service, or maybe let's say think about an asset management platform, right? These are interesting examples of asset-light services that are meant for a niche audience. At this point in time, it's really important for you to test that market by using tech in a very, very light way. That comes before Excel sheet, models, profitability, right? Ensuring if you have the product market fit, if you're getting some kind of traction, then putting your energies together in terms of scale up. So different from, I think, what both of them spoke about. I think what we find very, very interesting, because we are also a discovery platform. The next interesting brand you discover is likely to be on Instagram, right? Or maybe on WhatsApp. Because we are a discovery platform, we tend to see a lot of startup founders who actually use the platform for product testing. Figuring it out what my target segment might be. My target segment might actually be just Gurgaon or Noida. Or let's say the top 1% people in Gurgaon or Noida. Going after them, trying out the product, making sure that I have enough sampling in place, figuring it out. If it's working, then, you know, make it 2x, make it 5x very, very quickly. And that sometimes happens without a tech in place. Most of these startups don't even have an app. They majorly have a website. That's what they work with. They will have a good fulfillment engine at the back, but that's where the journey starts. And I believe at this point in time, because the market is getting so nuanced in India, that's very, very important for you to test out the market. Another question you asked, Nitin, is whether the tech is ready or not. I think now the biggest trend that we are seeing is most of the players are using bring your tech to work. So I need not develop my own tech, my own stack and my own product. There's a lot more emphasis right now on bringing the different parts of what a tech puzzle looks like. So if I have a great inventory management system I can buy from outside, let me do that. If I have a great product where I can take my point of sale and just totally digitize it, I would rather do that. If I have a demand management system that I can buy from outside, let me do that. So a good aggregation of engines can itself be how you operate on tech, rather than trying to do everything yourself, because I think there are so many good startups now that are building niche offerings within their segment.
Thank you so much for that. And, you know, I'll give you two perspectives. One, there is a big content creator. I will not take the name for obvious reasons, but, you know, he's built his own edtech startup where he's offering courses to students and so on and so forth. So I was speaking to him. So his point of view was that I've only built 1% of my tech. Remaining 99% I've bought, whether it's content management, whether it's acquisition, whether it's marketing engines like MoEngage, etc. So I bought all of these, or I have a paid subscription for all of these. We have a very different perspective. So, you know, when we started up, we thought that we would have the most moat in the market for internal efficiency as well as customer adoption if we build our own tech. And I think that's the concept that Flipkart also had in mind. So there are two perspectives to it. So you really need to see which is the most optimal for you guys. And at the beginning, for sure, I think my recommendation was don't build your own tech. Figure it out, engage with platforms, build a MVP, and that's what I took out of the conversation with Shweta, that build a MVP, go and test it on various platforms like Facebook or Insta or wherever, Google, and figure out what's working, and then start investing a lot more in tech. Until then, you should be, you know, buying out subscriptions and figuring out that whether it's really working or not. You know, so what happens if you invest a lot of money in your tech and suddenly you need a completely different thing and you need to pivot, and believe me, you will need to pivot at least 3 or 4 times on an average, right? So I will come to that pivoting part with Ish and Mukesh on how many times they pivoted, but we as a company, we pivoted 3 or 4 times. And the first 3 products that we brought to the market, crashed, completely crashed. The customer did not need it. We thought they would need it. They said, no, we don't need it. And then 6 months we wasted. And then after that we pivoted and then we found our product market fit. So, coming to that perspective, Ish, if you can just answer a little bit, in your journey from concept to again, merging with other companies and then going IPO, how many times in the initial few years, let's take 2 years as an example to be specific, how many times did you have to pivot or did you not pivot and you got lucky with the initial product market fit? So can you talk to founders and budding founders and entrepreneurs there?
Okay. So I think in this, in today's day and age, when there's a tremendous amount of competition, firstly, and there is a tremendous amount of opportunity also. You've got to be very clear that you've got the right fit, and for that, pivoting is extremely important. As a company, what did we do? We went where the opportunity was. We started off in a kind of a scenario where there was nobody else in the market. We were one of the first market movers. We were one of the leaders. We created a market in the domestic space first and then went global. And we then looked at the opportunity from a perspective as to around one core central product. How many are those offerings that we can tailor? And we looked at our customers coming to us and saying, can you also do this? Can you also do this? And we built our entire offering around that. Did we pivot very specifically? We pivoted not once, but we must have pivoted about 10 times along. We, in a 2-year time frame. Why did we pivot? We looked at our pivoting was of a slightly different type. We had a core product. We had a service offering that we gave to our customers. But there were several verticals and domains that came along, which we had never ever thought about earlier. Yeah, we had to go there and we had to build offerings for those verticals and domains that we had never imagined that we would need to offer. And that led us to research and to actually look at new technologies, to look at partnerships, to look at bringing in expertise that we never had internally. So it is collaborative. You need to pivot. You need to, at the end of the day, also ensure that you don't forget what your core central offering is. From a technology perspective, I think I'll just go back to one piece that you mentioned and prior to that, Shweta. I think it's important to understand what your end goal or objective is. There are a lot of organizations that can afford to buy bits and pieces from outside and put their entire product offering together, or their MVP as you call it. There are many which are very IP focused, which are tech focused. Organizations which are more service focused can buy bits and pieces of technology, put it together and make one single product out of it. But at the end of the day, if there is a very hardcore deep tech or an IP focused product, I think a lot of it has to be researched, it has to be developed, brought up to a certain stage, and only then can you actually go out to your customers, your potential customers, talk to them, see what they have to say, and come back, work, raise more money if you have to, but do it with a lot of grit and a lot of determination. It's not easy. There are tough times, but it is a very doable proposition. But no escape from pivoting and learning as you go along the way. However, at the end of the day, please make sure that you're always listening to your customer. You always have an ear on the ground. Don't forget that what the market is telling you is what you need to do. Many times, I think it's a known fact that an entrepreneur has a gut feel. But that's a very small percentage. At the end of the day, your gut feel is not just going to carry you through real hard facts, what the market tells you, feedback, data, that's what is going to carry you through.
Yeah, so, so we obviously, while starting up, it's a brilliant perspective. I'll summarize what Ish just said. he's basically saying that, gut feeling only has to be a proportion, a very small proportion of your decision making when you're trying to pivot or make any decisions. I think it has to be majorly data backed. Data can come from various perspectives of what your salespeople are telling you, what your employees are telling you, what the market, your customers are telling you, what your suppliers are telling you. What the market essentially is telling you is what you really, really need to hear, right? So that's what happened with us as well. A few decisions that we took gut-based, they actually turned out to be wrong, right? Where there was 80% gut involved and 20% data involved. The decisions that we also took while pivoting, we pivoted, as I said, 4 or 5 times, where we took a decision which was more than 50% data back, and there has to be a lot of gut involved at the initial stage because there's ambiguity in data, right? I mean, you don't get 100% data at any point of time. So more data-backed decisions that you make, they will sustain for a long term. So always keep finding out data. So data is gold, right? Your gut is not gold. Your gut may change tomorrow. Basis macro trends. Data will never change. Data will be according to the market. Data are facts. So that's what you should be looking at heavily. And that's what those startups who have really looked at data and gone behind data, they are the ones to really succeed. And they're not trying to fool themselves that ye to chali jayega if you keep doing this over and over again. No, they keep listening to the market, they keep iterating, and they are very nimble. I think that's what we have to be when you're an initial stage startup. You have to be very nimble and ready to listen to the market and ready to adjust to the market. Yeah. So again, coming to Mukesh, while scaling up, did you find any existential threat to your business, and how did you come out of it? What was the most difficult time that you went through? If you can just talk to us a little bit about that, because I can say with confidence that we've had 2 near-death experiences, right, where we were about to shut down in 3 weeks, and then we came back from that. So I would like to hear from you and your perspectives, because you are in a very traditional, not a traditional, but you bring in new technologies into India, which are existing outside, like LED screens and hearing aids, etc. So would love to hear your perspective around that, because that's one of the things on people's mind. How do you come out of that, and what was the near-death experience?
Yeah, it's a journey. So a lot of challenges, opportunities, threats, everything is involved in any business, including this one. The moment you bring something new, 10 other companies will start replicating the same thing. So you need to be a little ahead with your competition. And what Anand has mentioned, you have to your ear must be very grounded. Getting feedback from the customer and respond to that is very, very important, so that you keep on improving not only the product, even service is depend upon the industry is very, very important there. So it is evolving. Of course, a lot of challenges start from the technology to the price to the common market where every competition, when they copy from each other, they want to say, okay, it's the same thing, but price is lesser. So, and when you want to run the company, you need to have particularly when you have your own money, you want to make the profitable, so that you keep on running and scaling to the next level. So all these challenges are there. So you need to be very good on the data in terms of about your customer, market size, and segmentation. Again, you need to have very focused approach as far the sales and marketing is concerned. Okay, if you want to have in corporate sector, you want to be in government sector, or you want to be directly to the end customer level. So depend upon which kind of products are there. So you need to be data driven, you need to be service driven, depend upon the industry, because service many times play an important role than even the product, because even you have the great product but you don't have a good service, it may not last long. So it is important, the service. And third, keep on adding newer and newer features and benefit. That is very, very important.
Yeah, so, one thing that I picked out from that particular conversation, which we also 100% believe in, is that burn is not the answer. I think you need to get to profitability as soon as possible, so that you can sustain yourself, and even in hard times, if the competition is getting close to you, just the fact that you're profitable and have money to sustain yourself, you will be 10 times ahead. I think this new fad of burn and scale pe sochenge, profit ke bare mein, we've seen in the last 2 years what has happened to a lot of startups who had that concept in mind. So we also, one learning that we had from a near-death experience was that bottom line hona chahiye. Vanity metric, revenue is a vanity metric, dikhawa hai. bottom line jab tak nahi hai, you cannot sleep peacefully, and the others will also not let you sleep peacefully. So you will always be thinking about what if another near-death experience happens? What will you do then? So that's the thing that I took out from this this conversation. And please, Ish.
I just want to add one thing to it. I think a lot of startups, say कि पहले उसको करने दो, पहले उसको करने दो, मैं देखता हूँ वो कैसे करता है, फिर मैं भी करूँगा. You have to remember one thing. If you want to be a leader, you have to be the first one out there, going there, doing it, and doing it for others to follow. You have to set the benchmarks. If you don't set the benchmarks, your competition will come in, take over, and you won't know where to look. So, while we look at everything else, I think it's extremely important to look at the profitability aspect. So, unit economics, as they call it in this business, is extremely, extremely critical. Make sure your unit economics are right, but also make sure you don't take forever to get into the market. You've got to make sure that you're the first one out there and you're setting the benchmarks for others to follow. So I think this is what I wanted to add, Nitin.
Yeah, so funny story about Paytm and the other payments companies as well. So some people claim that, Paytm ne burn kiya, market set up kiya, others came in and, it was easier for them, but at the same time, Paytm was the first one to go IPO. So they had a little bit of jollies. Obviously, they faced a lot of problems. So, coming to you, Shweta. So, what are some of the key problems do you think startups facing, and what do you think that they've done wrong, and what do you think they could have done better? You can add technology perspective, other perspectives, absolutely no problem. So, talk to us a little bit about that, because you being on the, with the bird's eye view, where all the startups come to you for tech advice or for technology, and where they advertise on your platform, or also take your tech stack. So what do you see some of the startups doing wrong, and what do you see some of the startups doing absolutely right?
It's a very wide question to answer, but let me try. So if I was to break down the three things that is a recipe for a good startup, is I would say measurability. Measurability of everything you do. As Nitin was saying, chasing vanity metrics, absolutely a no-no. But I would say vanity metrics in every department. If you can't measure the worth of every dollar you are spending, be obsessed about it very, very early on your journey. The second one is automation. I think in India, and because I look at even global markets, the one problem I see is because there are so many people passionate to work in a startup, it's very easy for you to scale up teams fairly, fairly easily. There is a tendency to throw bodies at the problem. So let's say I am trying to set up an operations team. I would go in and put in like 50 to 100 people, really, really cool. It looks great because, I'm trying to build a company and I have a 100 people team, right? But the problem that it creates is it makes you slow from day one. So be very, very open about thinking from automation, thinking from a human-less lens from day one. I've met marketing teams, operations team, which work with like 2 or 3 people, and I'm talking about companies that do close to about $250, $300 million in a year. And that happens because they've been very smart about automation. They haven't filled up their teams with a lot of people. They have been able to think about how I can do it with a minimum cost, minimum human interface. Because see, the good thing about doing automation from day one is you can dial up and dial down really quickly. And I'm going again to what Nitin, Ish, Mukesh mentioned, right? There'll be a lot of near-death experiences. Markets will change, regulation will change, things will turn. If you do not have the ability to turn up and turn down, dial up, dial down on everything, right? Marketing, customer reach, SOPs you're giving, discounts you're giving, you will have a real problem in reading the markets. So that's the second advice I would have. So measurability, automation. The third one, which is not big news, is customer obsessiveness. And it's one of those things we don't think about in a big way, but go back to the days of Amazon. And I still think they are the most beautiful example of being obsessed about your customer experience. If you have poor feedback, don't write it down as, oh, these are just few people who are not happy with my product. Be obsessed about getting your product right. Because think about if you have 1 out of 10 people who are not happy with your service, when you scale to thousands and lakhs and crores, that one will also multiply, yeah? And very quickly it will create a domino effect and your cards will fall down on the floor. So again, I'm going back to what Nitin mentioned. If there are companies who kind of always think about that I did a lot of burn, I created a market and somebody else came in and took the market, it's not because I did a lot of burn and I opened up the market. There must be something that they could have done differently in the way they thought about the customer experience. So from our perspective as Meta, and I would say any platform would say the same, if you're able to get those three things right, like measure every dollar that you spend on. So performance before brand, right? Please do not go and put hoardings across the city. It might be great for your parents to look at or your friends to look at, but not a great use of your money. So think about the value of every dollar you spent. Think about measuring whatever return you think is useful. Not for your investors. You know, there are ways in which facts can be painted out for VCs. But as Nitin was saying, right, it's not GMVs, it's not revenue, it's actual dollar you get in the door. And we are getting to that maturity, I think, as a country where VCs and investors are asking those hard questions. I mean, I've had VCs who come in and say, oh, why is your platform so expensive? And then sometimes I have to go back and explain saying, you know, my platform is automated. It's not because I am asking for more money versus less money from someone. It's about how a founder is thinking about how they will spend their money. And the last one, as I said it, please be obsessed about your customer experience from day one. If the customers don't like your product, you might be showing ads after ads, right? On a YouTube or a Facebook or an Instagram. People will go in and call it spam. They will go in and report that the product doesn't work, no matter how beautiful the ad looks, yeah? So it's really important to get those factors right.
Can I just add one thing to
Yeah,
what
please.
Shweta said? Shweta, just, you know, you come from a tech background. There's one word that, you know, we use in this domain, disruption. And maybe, you know, having led a lot of innovation-driven activity, I think maybe the audience can do a lot more by understanding disruption. Because many people just believe in following the leader and saying, वो कर रहा है तो अच्छी बात होगी, मैं भी वही करता हूँ. But remember one thing, if you really want to be a unicorn, and that's the topic of today's, you know, discussion. If you want to be a unicorn, disruption is extremely important. You need to be disruptive. How do you become disruptive? Shweta, maybe you could throw some light on that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, Ishan. I hope I had a recipe for that. But sadly, I don't. See, for me, disruption, maybe the word looks very big, but if you break it down, right, there are a lot of traditional business models that are being challenged every day. Let me give an example. Go back to the time where we all used to watch linear TV. TV pe sirf do channel aate the. That was the content we had. Then OTT came and disrupted, right? That wasn't very long back. That was just 6-7 years back. And now, small screen is where we watch movies, where we watch series. That's a place where we get all our entertainment from. As we speak right now, even OTT is getting disrupted. Nobody has the time and the bandwidth to wait for a movie that can come on OTT. How do I get my movie on demand? If it's still something that I really want to consume, can I do it on an audio series? Yeah. So think about where the disruption hasn't happened. A lot of people take that as status quo. Think about, again, the media model, right? TVs used to earn their money from ads, right? That's what used to happen. OTTs went in and said, no, we will change this. We will earn our money through subscription and partly by advertising. However, advertising money is defined, right? And there are few players who would get a larger proportion of it. We are now getting into a model where microtransactions are becoming important. So how do I pay for every transaction, every episode that you want to watch? That's becoming interesting. It's a new disruption. I've only seen that happening in the last 9 months. But players were thinking ahead of the curve, were thinking maybe audio versus video is the way people will consume. That's the way disruption can happen. It's not always on thinking, oh, people are going to disrupt something by saying, I'm going to be the new Sam Altman in Discover AI. It's not always the only definition of disruption. Think about how the same traditional business model can be challenged every day by using technology that is still available all around you.
Yeah, so Ish, very good point that you brought about, and I like to add one thing, right? So हमेशा एक entrepreneur को तीन चीजें सोचनी चाहिए, and that framework has worked extremely well for us and our organization. It's called why, what, how. So that is क्यों, what is क्या, and it's how is कैसे. right? So sometimes what happens that people jump into the how part, कि कैसे करेंगे, right? सबसे पहले, I think it's very important in your journey to figure out the why. Until you figure out the why, you will never be a disruptor. So for us also, it took us about 6 months to 1 year to figure out why do we exist. Are we, when we were a very traditional, we wanted to disrupt a traditional business like selling steel or giving funding to SMEs, right? But we had to really find out a niche by figuring out the why. The what and the how after that is so easy, I can't tell you, but it's about the why. You should always ask, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you want to exist, right? So what is very simple to answer and how is the easiest to answer कि कैसे करोगे उसको, right? So this is what disruption really is. So you have to figure out your why and then what and how will really, follow suit. Sorry, Mukesh, you wanted to add.
Yeah, just would like to add on that point. I think great things have been discussed. So in the startup world, there is always conflict between value and valuation, right? If you have your value right, don't worry about the valuation, automatically it will follow. If you just because of few momentum and because of few things, something new arrive because of some disruptive technology, it may continue, it may not, because things are changing very fast. Unless until you are connected with the customer behaviors, even generation within a customers, you have a early stage, mid stage, and old. So you have to very focus about what kind of customer is you are going to engage, and based on that, if you develop your product, then you get the value. You will be getting the valuation, all the things there. And disruption, since I have another company, we are dealing with this artificial intelligence. Then again, it's a huge thing, right? It's a huge chapter, in fact. So within artificial intelligence, we have been working on the conversational AI. So the way customer care, they now looking forward 24/7 and their own way. So it's not necessary 9 to 6 kind of, okay, my office is open, but after 9 o'clock, I'll reach out to you. They want the moment, the demand. So yeah, it's a 24/7 multilingual. So somebody is asking, suppose you are a global company, they are asking in German, and if you're not able to address that, probably you have lost that opportunities.
That's where I guess the tech comes into play, right? So once you figured out, and you have to be customer obsessed. I think I'll just summarize what they all spoke about. It's about one is that be really obsessed with your customers and try and seek feedback from your customers and find out a niche in the customer segment that you want to operate. Probably doing everything and anything on the planet is not the right answer. So be disruptive in a particular space. Be disruptive and think about the why why do you exist in your particular sector? Why is there a need for you to exist? Can someone else not take your space? And don't be afraid of being the first one in a particular new area or sunshine sector. Don't be afraid of doing that, because if you're the second or the third, you probably have you don't have the first mover's advantage to get the podium, right? So as many people said, no one remembers कि 100-meter race Olympics में कौन जीता था, वो उसेन बोल्ट का नाम ही याद रखेंगे. No one remembers Jack Blake or whoever it was. I don't even remember. So be very focused on having the first mover advantage in that space. Figure out the why. Be very customer obsessed and customer focused, and figure out your niche. I think that's the conversation that I took, or the summary that I took from this particular panel. So last thing that we're going to be focusing on is that scale up वगैरह हो गया. We talked about profit burn and so on and so forth. So how do you now think about the exit, right? And now exits are of 3 or 4 ways, and each of us are thinking about it slightly differently. So exits are one, you can sell your company to another big company, right? So that's one way of exiting. Second way of exiting, you merge with another company and then you run it together to become a big mammoth organization, a bigger organization. The third way of exiting is via the SME IPO that I think Mukesh will talk to you about a lot more. The fourth way of exiting is through an IPO, right? A main IPO. Now again, there is 4A and 4B. 4A is that when should you think about IPO? When you are at medium scale, think about IPO and then go very big. Or when you are at extremely large scale, like Paytm was, and then or Zomato was, and then you think about IPO there and then grow at about whatever 20-30% an annum instead of 50% an annum. So these are the exit mechanisms, and I think I'll start with you, Ish. I think you, as far as I know, and my conversation with you, you have merged into other companies and then you scaled up and then took it to an IPO. So you have both the perspectives. So tell me about how merging was, what was the thought process behind merging with another company and running it together to take it to an IPO? Was it difficult? Was it hard? Is this what you would recommend?
Sure. Thanks, Nitin. I mean, firstly, it's a journey. And our journey was not a short one. It was a fairly long one. When we started our business, there was not very much money in the market. Money was very, very hard to come by. But all the same, you needed money to expand. You needed money to add on technology. You needed money to do just about everything. But at the same time, you also needed to ensure that you survived. You kept your ins and your outs, that is your inflow and your outflow. You kept that balanced in one way or the other. So I think first and foremost, before you think of exits, I think you need to really look at, are your books balanced? Have you been able to reach a stage where you can show a potential partner, whether you call it a partner who wants to merge with you or who wants to buy you out or who wants to see you through to a journey which will take you to an IPO or whatever. Yeah, I think point number one, make sure your books are balanced. Without that, you have nothing. If your books are not balanced, you have nothing. You're only going to end up embarrassing yourself. You're only going to end up losing out on a lot of things that could be potentially yours. So point number one. Point number two, there's a right time for everything. I think that time is critical. You need to take the right decision at the right time. Now, when is that right time? Nobody knows. But that's something that you've got to measure and you've got to keep in your mind as and when you see each stage of your business. The first one leads to the next one. So the right time is only when you are either balancing your books or making some money. So whether you look at a merger or you look at something else, your books need to be balanced. So is a merger sensible, or is a exit or a, some sort of other instrument that you want to look at important? So you've got to really look at the business you're in, you've got to look at the environment you're in, and you've got to look at what stage of that life cycle you're in. So I think what you've got to keep in mind and you've got to ensure is that, have I been able to do all that is under my control? Do I have access to capability, funds, etc., to grow myself? Or does it make strategic sense? Please remember, strategy in any business is extremely critical. Does it make strategic sense for me to shake hands with a partner or a competitor and grow from there? That may actually be a great way to do it. So what we did was, we decided to expand from our little comfort zone. We wanted to go places. So we said, let's look at, can we team up with people who are in similar domains or bigger than us or doing things better than us or more diversified or more cash rich? And can we make use of their resources and grow? That's the way we looked at it. And we grew as a company first by merging with a much larger entity. We brought in the much required resources, the much required technology, the much required global reach. So you've got to see whether your partner can bring in better reach for you. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's all about taking your business from stage A to stage B, growing it from one geography to another, going from one level of profitability to another. I think if you're able to do that, and you're able to shake hands with players who are like-minded, shaking hands with players who are like-minded can also lead to confusions. It can also lead to conflicts. It's not always a simple and straightforward relationship.
Remember one thing, nothing in life is simple and straightforward. At the end of the day, yeah, whether it's a husband, wife, brother, sister, father, mother, or friends relationship, you've got to be able to give and take somewhere. And you've got to be able to see whether
You can drive towards a larger common objective or a larger common goal, which is a lot more focused and stronger, which will help not just you yourself. At the end of the day, when you're running an ecosystem or you're running a company, you've got to think about people who are all around you. You've got to think about your customers, your employees, and then take a decision whether a merger is better or an IPO is better or selling out is better. Not everybody can go to an IPO. You must understand that. You require certain pieces of your business to be in place to go to an IPO. Mukesh
And public markets are brutal.
Brutal.
So, once you go IPO, obviously people tell you that short-term stock movements se farak nahi padta hai, but it does play on your mind. I mean, you keep looking at the stocks from my friends who've gone IPO. I keep speaking to them. They say that it does play on your mind. If the stock is going down by 2-3%, then you start thinking that, oh, why is this happening? Why is this not happening? But Elon Musk, his employees, that I don't care when the stock tanks by 90% because and long term it's going to work out. But yeah, I'll bring in Mukesh's perspective. So Mukesh is obviously going for an SME IPO, as he said, and it's a different route for an exit, and he can talk about his perspective in terms of an exit. And then, we can take a few audience questions and we can have Shweta's point of view as well on that. So, yeah, Mukesh.
So exit depend upon your financial goal, right? What you are planning for that, and it is who is deciding. Founders are deciding. So again, it is not programmed. So it's a depend upon the situation. If it is doing well, naturally you want to do from SME IPO. You want to go to main board IPO, and other things are there. So these are the journeys. So again, if time is short, then we can have a few questions and then, yeah. Okay. So it's a depend upon the goal. So as for our company is concerned, we have decided, okay, right now we are coming with this SME IPOs, and within 3 years, we would be going to be the main board IPO. Because in this industry, we are going to be the first as for India market is concerned. And of course, after the SME IPO, we are going to be global. We have already started few offices, like we have a Dubai office. Now we are in the process of opening in the US office, another thing. So we know potential is quite huge. But rightly mentioned, when you are in the public platforms, everything, not only the performance, even perceptions matters a lot. And we have seen in recent years, many big companies, something just rumor based on the event, stock get ups and down. So it's a really challenging journey. As long as we see another thing, you are only few person is interacting with you, but here thousands of people.
Yeah, everyone's interacting. And IPO is not means to an end, right? IPO is the beginning of something new. So it's not about आप founder हो, IPO कर दिया, exit हो गया, आपको पैसे मिल गए, खत्म हो गया. No, it's a beginning of something even bigger, even major. So you have to be about when to go IPO. Like we are planning our IPO next year or next to next year. So we have to be very careful whether to grow with private money and when to go with the public money, because that decision will base your next 10 years, right? At least, obviously, infinite years, but the next 10 years, at least it's going to really affect you. So I think we will take a couple of audience questions. We are about 5 minutes away from the conclusion of the panel. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask anyone of us. Yeah, please, sir. Yeah, please. Take this. It's fine.
Hello. So basically, my question is for a young entrepreneur or a college student, how to decide between the pricing and the product? Which should be your priority? Like for some cases, like India is a price sensitive market for each. So how you decide between the pricing and the product?
I told you it is fundamental, has to be strong. So your product has to be good. So as a founder, the first priority to make the product very competitive. Then only come about the pricing and other things there. So priority wise, it is always a product. And of course, if you want to come down to like lower segment, create one more version of that. You need to create a like a basket kind of product so that you can play with the pricing and you can play with the product also.
See, your product has to be, according to me, your product has to be. And then what you can think about is how can I add more service element to it? How can I add more technological features to it so that I can start charging a particular. So initially, if you start sing, so there's something wrong with the mic. Yeah. So initially, if you only think about sing and pricing only, then your mind will not go about enhancing the product. So I think a product has to be right. You should pilot it out with a few customers, get a sense of pricing, do a little bit of A/B testing on the pricing, in my opinion, right? So it doesn't need to be one price, and then you do a bit of A/B testing. कि इन clients को मैं इस price point पे बेचता हूँ, थोड़े clients को दूसरे price point पे बेचता हूँ. Let me see how the product is taken by the market. That. Yeah. One last question from the audience, if there is any. Yes, sir.
Thank you. It was wonderful. So
Hello.
I have one question regarding how if the investor is ready, okay, and he is ready to invest in a startup company, then how you will decide how much stake we have to give it to the investor?
Okay. I'll just share one perspective, then Ishji can come in. According to me, investor ready होने से ही नहीं होता है सब कुछ. I have seen many companies fail because they got in the wrong investor who doesn't know anything about the sector, even if they know about, or they know too much about the sector, right? That's also very, very, there's a lot of conflict there. So one, you have to be very careful about selecting the investor. See, in terms of pricing, market is pretty efficient, right? So if you ask for $1 million at $5 million valuation, you yourself would know whether that's right or wrong. But if you have that kind of conviction that I can see in terms of that particular kind of value, not the valuation, that kind of value in the near term, you're right to ask for that value, right? So I think you as a founder need to be very strong in terms of the value that you're demanding, rather than the investor coming and saying that मैं तो इसी पे करूँगा. As a founder, you should be very set कि initial जो आप offer दे रहे हो, can you back that up with facts, with figures, with data from the market, with the growth, with the cash flows, etc., etc. But before that, selecting the right investor is very, very key. You know, sometimes it's okay to go with an investor who's offering $1 million at $4 million valuation rather than an investor who's offering $2 million at $8 million valuation. Trust me, I have seen those companies really tank because conflict ho gaya and so on and so forth, and then they were not able to come up out, they were not able to get follow-on investments because that particular investor was creating a lot of problems. So that is very, very important. So Ishji, you want to add
just
anything? And that's the last perspective.
One comment I'll add for you. I think, everything's been said. Your first investor, if you don't choose that investor wisely, and it's not the right investor, can either make your company or break it. It's as simple as that. So the first investor is always the most critical. It can't just be he's offering me $100, the other guy who's offering me $80. Yeah, I'll go with the $100 guy. Yeah. That's not the logic. The logic has to be, is the 80 investor offering me something which is a good long-term value proposition? I would go with that guy. I would compromise on those $20, but I would make sure that that investor works with me well into the future. So just keep mindful of that. Other than that, I think everything's been explained and mentioned, and I'm fully with that. So thank you.
Thank you.